So this video is going to go over a little bit of the uh, content for class 7. So we discussed different options for working with obstacles during practice and opportunities during practice. This is a common kind of paradigm to think about growth in mindfulness practice through the unified mindfulness lens. So at any given moment during a period of practice, or even during just normal daily life, one could say that in general, we can stop and say, all right, is there something hindering me feeling like I'm progressing here? Maybe specifically with practice, mindfulness practice. Or is there something that's really cultivating my mindfulness growth? There are different strategies to be able to use those moments skillfully. This is a part of recycling the reaction, that principle I've mentioned before, where something is unpleasant or a hindrance or an obstacle or a wall we're running up against. Great, we can work with it in different ways. On the other hand, if something is really showing us an opportunity, we feel like there's a window opening up to something deeper, something more interesting in our meditation experience, then great, we can work with that. This is a good way to go about ironing out what feel like bumps in the road especially as we begin to do a formal practice routine with meditation. So let's talk about a couple of the options, or a couple of the potential options. So roughly speaking, we could think of, all right, I'm sitting down for formal practice of meditation, and there is an unpleasant experience that occurs that I feel like I'm beginning to fight with, or that prevents me from doing the practice that I want to. So the two options that we can respond to this unpleasantness with is to anchor away from it or to focus toward it. Okay, so it's a turning toward or turning away. And so when we anchor away, we're not trying to stuff the negative, unpleasant experience down. We're not trying to ignore it. We're simply letting it be in the background, and we're bringing background equanimity to it, while we narrow our focus range in a different direction. So two basic ways we might experience unpleasantness is physical pain or discomfort, or emotional distress, okay, or mental distress. So basically unpleasantness in the body or unpleasantness in the mind or our emotions. And so let's say I'm stuck up in my head while I'm doing the see, hear, feel technique. I'm trying to do that, but I keep getting sucked up into worrying thoughts, carried away in worrisome thoughts. An option to anchor away would be, for instance, as an example, to switch techniques to focus on just feel rest. So I'm drawing my attention down into the body, noticing restful or relaxing or neutral feeling locations in the body, and just doing that technique. The thoughts I may be having are still going on, but they're in the background. I'm kind of letting them do their thing, just like you would if you were doing the normal feel rest technique, without worrisome thoughts. Just focus on rest in the body. Another example might be anchor out. So if I'm lost in a lot of ruminating thoughts or even negative self-talk, I might decide to anchor my attention outward, just on see, hear, feel out. Right? So I'll still label see, hear, feel, but just sights, just sounds, just physical sensations of the body. So that's another kind of option. We've also covered feel, flow, and feel good. Feel, flow, and feel good are excellent options to turn toward, to anchor to. Flow can be very, very interesting in the body. So, and that kind of can let us anchor ourselves to something that feels interesting or engaging, instead of continuing to get lost in the unpleasantness. You can also replace the unpleasantness with positive thinking, positive emotion in the body, using feel good, for instance. So that's anchor away with unpleasant emotion. We can also turn toward unpleasant experience. And what we might do with that is first we can deconstruct it using see, hear, feel. So if I'm lost in my thoughts with anxious thinking, I can begin to label see, hear, whatever the thoughts take form as, and make those anxious thoughts a part of my practice. If I feel discomfort, pain, emotional distress in the body, I might turn toward it and let it and recognize the kind of flowing quality that it may have. Even a pain like in the back or the knee, for instance, normally we say, well, my knee was hurting all day, but upon close inspection, we notice that the pain actually grows and diminishes. It pops on and off line. It changes or moves or swirls in some way, even though it's all unpleasant because it's painful. There is that quality of change, which is a feel-flow observation. So we can begin the feel-flow technique, for instance, and work with the pain directly by facing toward it. We also may notice that sometimes there's pleasant experience that pops up, and we can do the same, have the same options there. We can see it as an opportunity to move toward or to focus toward and deeply appreciate the positive glow in the body, for instance, if we happen to notice that, or the kind of quiet mind that sometimes can come about in meditation practice. We might notice that mental talk has kind of simmered down to a murmur, for instance, or completely gone away. And we can turn toward that quietness, that restful here in, and focus on just here rest, for instance. And we can talk about that technique, but you can still focus on that quality of restfulness. We also may want to practice with pleasant experience by continuing to anchor to something else and let that pleasant experience be in the background. That's still strengthening our skills of concentration, clarity, and equanimity. So if I'm doing a practice of feel rest, and that leads to or kind of evokes a very positive, full, warm sense of emotion in the body, which sometimes happens with feel rest techniques, I might let that still be in the background, and for the sake of strengthening my skills, the skills of my attention, I may choose to continue to track and stay in touch with the neutral absence of emotion in the body. So if I feel a lot of, in the solar plexus and the chest, a kind of brightening up in activity that I might want to face toward if that's something I decide to do. But I could also focus out toward the kind of neutrality of the hands and feet, for instance, and keep that feel rest technique going for the sake of just developing my skills. So what I'll have us try here in a minute is to do a formal practice time where we have some time to do a practice of your choosing. And after a few moments, I will ask you to observe whether there's an obstacle or an opportunity present. And you can decide to keep with the technique that you've chosen and either and anchor away or turn toward the unpleasantness or pleasantness you experience. Or you can switch techniques to make that choice too. Okay, so this will be a more open kind of practice period where you can decide the technique on your own, and we'll still have a 10-minute period, but I'll guide you to switch techniques if you choose, or stay with the technique that you choose about midway through. So go ahead and settle up your posture, let your spine straighten up, let your muscles relax around it, and one bell will begin and one bell will end this practice period. So with your body in a relatively still, alert, but relaxed posture, go ahead and, if you haven't already, select one of the techniques to begin putting into place now. And for the next few moments, do your best to stick with that technique. Whatever it is that you've chosen, it doesn't really matter, just choose one. And execute that technique as consistently as you can. If it's a technique that involves noting, try to keep your labels consistent and steady, keeping you engaged with the practice you've chosen. If it's a technique without labels, that's fine. Just do your best to stay deeply engaged with the effort. Not over-efforting, but making sure that you stick to whatever technique you've decided to practice for this period of time. If you notice yourself being caught up and carried away in any parts of your experience, that's fine. Just notice that that's happening and guide yourself back to the technique you've chosen, committing to it once again and engaging in it as fully as you can. Now at this time, I'd like to ask you to notice if there's any obstacle in the way that you're practicing right now, any challenge or difficulty, or if there's any experience of opportunity, some part of the practice that you're deeply enjoying or feeling satisfied by. Now, if one of those are present, do your best to make a decision whether you will stick to the technique you've chosen, either anchoring away or facing toward whatever it is that you've noticed as an obstacle or an opportunity, or make the decision to change your technique. Choose a different one and engage as fully as you can in that one. It's totally up to you. Any of those options are fine. Make an intentional choice. Anchor away or face toward whatever opportunity or obstacle you notice. Choose whether to stick to the same technique or to choose a different one. best to fully participate in the choice you've made. Stay with whatever technique you're employing right now. Do so in a consistent and steady way. Noticing when you're being pulled away and reorienting yourself back to the technique. If you're noticing yourself feeling sleepy or if your attention feels dull, do your best to straighten your spine again. You can choose to open your eyes if you wish. And reestablish your commitment to whatever practice you've chosen. And stick with it. Remember, if you feel caught up, carried away, feel your attention has been stolen from the technique you've chosen, just do your best to recognize that and then to guide yourself back. Steadily staying in contact and participating fully in the technique you've chosen. Whatever technique you've chosen is fine. Just do your best to be steadily engaged with it. Okay, hopefully this was a way you could experiment with the different options that you have as you run into either challenges or unique opportunities in your practice. And remember, basically you can think of the anchor away or the focus toward strategies, and that will inform you as to whether you stick with the technique you've chosen or switch it up and choose a different one. Okay, so I hope you have a productive time practicing and using all these options so that every moment is used and nothing is wasted.